On today's Toolsday, we're doing the most requested comparison, the 36 volt Makita track saw versus the 36 volt Festool track saw. By the way, Toolsday, great recommendation from you guys. Thank you so much. Before we get into it, if you entertain me for 15 seconds here, I just want to talk about tool sponsorships and this channel. We do not take paid reviews. We will not, have not, and never will take them. It is important to me that you know that everything said in my videos is my opinion and my opinion alone. Festool actually offered me $6,000 and a free track saw. I'll put that email up here on the screen with names redacted, of course, to do a review of this. And I said, no, I can't do that because I think my channel is very unique, that it is 99% user funded. And then that is you guys supporting the channel by heading over to the Katz-Moses store and picking up the products that I create or love and carry in my store. It's not to say I don't work with brands. I do occasionally, but it is only with brands that have already been in my shop for a very long time and I have a personal relationship with the owner and I really like them. And then, even then, it's never a they pay me for videos. It is a I'll get a small kickback from their company for recommending their products. But they know that there is absolutely, they have zero input in any of the creative or the videos we put out here. So I just want you guys to know that always, 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 always on my channel, everything is my opinion and it is true and it is what I actually believe in, and that is because of the great support of you guys. So I thank you so much because really we couldn't do this without you, and that means the world to me, and I will never sell that out, and I promise you that. So thank you for entertaining me. Let's get into the review. First, let's talk about track saws and what they do. So I purchased this Makita about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, and I bought this Festool in October, I believe, or early November of last year, so I've had it for a few months. Track saws are incredible. They could almost take the place of a table saw if you kind of set up some jigs to ensure that you're getting square cuts. But what they do is they ride a track and they cut along a line. And so what's great about these tracks is you can line up this line with your cut and know that the very inside is going to be the very inside of the blade. So they're very accurate, they're great. You can get these tracks in a ton of different lengths. They're great because the saw automatically retracts into the case and there's no exposed area, which makes them a lot safer than, let's say, like a cordless skill saw. You can do great plunge cuts with them, so if you need to cut out an inside square on something, you could line up the track and then plunge it down, and they are great additions to any shop. Now the cordless version is great because it's portable and you can take it anywhere. However, the downside to these is, you know, saws kick up a lot of dust, and so usually I hook this up to a vacuum unless I'm working outside. If you're working outside, obviously you don't need to do it, but if you were in construction and you were at a client's house installing cabinets or something, you would need to bring a vacuum anyways with you, so it sort of dials down the portability a little bit. However, track saws are incredible. Cross cuts, rip cuts, whatever you want, they do very, very straight cuts. So let's talk about these two and the differences and similarities between them. Now, when you talk about what comes with them, the thing that you'll hear through this whole video is how similar these products are. I'm gonna talk about the kits because that's typically how you would buy these if you're gonna get them from the get-go, if you didn't have any, you know, a corded version or other track saws. So they both come with a great sustainer. Of course, Festool has the best sustainers in the game, but the Makita works great. They come with a charger and 2 batteries. They both fast charge at about 45 minutes, and they both have about an hour of usage. They come with a great finish blade, both of them do, and I'll show you some cuts here in a minute. And in fact, I never used the factory blade on the Makita, so it was in the sustainer, so I kind of have used them about equal amounts, and you can see the quality of cut from the two. The tracks that the kits come with are 55 inches for both of them, but here's the great thing. The Makita comes in at, the lowest price I've been able to find was on ToolNut at $586 for the whole kit. Festool, lowest price I've been able to find is $799, $800. So there's a price difference of about, quick math here, $214. The Makita is about $214 cheaper, but they use the exact same track. So even if you're gonna get the Festool, you can buy the Makita track. They run and fit perfectly, and the Makita track's about 40% cheaper. I think for the 55-inch track, the Makita's 80 bucks and the Festool's 150. So you'll see, again, I'm gonna say it probably 100 times, but how similar these are. They both fit the exact same tracks. However, one thing to be aware of is you wouldn't want to interchange the new track without changing out the rubber piece, which is also a good thing to mention, is that there's a zero clearance rubber insert here, which is replaceable. And so as it gets abused, you can just replace it. In my kind of head-to-headness, you find that the Festool blade is about a 16th or a 32nd further out from the track than the Makita. So if you had a track that you already used a Makita on, you wouldn't want to use the Festool without replacing the rubber piece under here, because it wouldn't have the zero clearance. Another thing about the tracks, both of them have this anti-slip grip stuff, which I believe is replaceable. I've never had to, obviously, but it is super sticky. And oh, I forgot to mention the Makita sustainer is 2 pieces. There's a storage place in it, which is amazing. You can also get these connector kits, which connect the tracks together. Both tracks have this area underneath that fits those like match fit clamps. I know Festool has their own proprietary ones, which are much more expensive than like you could buy the micro jig match fit ones, or there's lots of those dovetail type clamps that fit in there. You could clamp it down to a board, but it's so sticky I've never needed to. And then here's the connector piece that connects the tracks together, and it fits in both tracks, and there's a nut that goes in there and connects them together nice and solid. You do want to make sure there is a little bit of play. So when you do that, let's say you're ripping down a full sheet of plywood, you do want to put a straight edge against the 2 tracks and make sure they are straight, or use a measuring tape and make sure your cutting edge is the same distance away from the edge, so you're getting a parallel straight cut. Now, both of these are phenomenal saws. Of course, you know Festool's reputation, so I would be lying if I didn't say everything about the Festool saw is just a little bit nicer, like maybe 5–10% nicer or easier to use. But when you go through the features of these, they both have speed control. The Makita's up here, Festool's on the side. Festool goes to 6 and Makita goes to 5. So if you've ever seen Spinal Tap, this one goes to 6.
These go to 11.
They both have the ability to check the charge of the batteries. Festool is actually on the batteries themselves. Makitas are on the battery too, but the way that they go in, they're on the inside so you can't see them. So they added a battery checker on the actual saw. Both saws have the ability to loosen the slop on the track. So they have these little dials on them that adjust how much slop is on the saw. So you look for this happy medium where there's no wiggle, but it'll still slide effortlessly. That was hard to say. I think one other thing to note about the Festool is it will run without one battery in it. It also has some meters on there, and I haven't quite figured them out, because when I have the batteries fully charged, I think it's how much it's drawing from each battery, because it'll be different measurements that are on the side of the battery. You can see these batteries are completely full, but it only lights up 2 of the 3 LED lights. So I'm not sure. I'm sure the manual says what that is for. Now, when we come to the front of the saw, this is where you do your adjustments. I think one thing to note that the Makita has that the Festool does not is this little clip that locks you into the track. And when that is really great to use is when you're doing a 45-degree angled cut, because the saw moves this way, so it's sort of hanging off of the track quite a bit, and the weight distribution has sort of gone this way. That being said, there's a lot of weight on this side of the Festool, so it may not need it, and that may be why it's not there. Now, when you talk about adjustments, this, of course, is an area where Festool is, again, about 10 to 15% better. The Makita, this is how you set your depth stop. You loosen it, moving it down by hand, it's in metric, and then you just tighten it. It is easy to use. However, the way that I normally use it is I'll put it on the edge of the piece, put the saw down, and I see how far I want to go, and then I have to reach over here and do it. Now, on the Festool, it is quite a bit easier to use because you just squeeze, and it has positive stops. So you just squeeze it, and then you can actually micro adjust that as well. So if I know my board is 1 inch, I can set it to 1 inch, or 1 click below 1 inch, 1 1/8 or whatever that is, and then I know it's going to be there. Now, both saws adjust their angle the same way. It's important to note that when you adjust the angle, you're also going to change your zero clearance rubber piece on your track. So if track saw is something you use regularly, it certainly wouldn't hurt to have 2 tracks, one for cutting 45s or steep angles and one for 90-degree cuts, so you're not kind of losing that zero clearance. And the reason that zero clearance makes so much difference is when you're cutting plywood, a blade is always coming up through the wood and has a tendency to splinter that top veneer on plywood. They both adjust the same way. You have to loosen a knob on the front of both saws as well as the back, and then the saw will tilt out like this, and they both do it the exact same. The Makita has a positive stop gauge where you can set it to 22.5 or 45, and the Festool, of course, is very accurate and easy to read, so there's a very clear piece on there that you can set it. One of the great things about the Festool, if you come in here, it has a micro adjust, so if the saw ever gets off 90, you can adjust it with this set screw pretty easily. And then it also has the ability to come back -1. If you need to undercut a bevel or something like that, you can come back -1 from 90, which is something you were doing if you were butting up a board against a wall or something like that in construction, and you wanted to ensure that, if the wall was wonky, that you're definitely gonna have a clean edge right against the wall. On the Makita, it has a few different features in this arena. You can actually go to 48 degrees, so you can go past 45. It also, the way you undercut something is you push these little tabs in, and it bypasses the micro adjusts for the saw. So when you're at 90, you can adjust these 2 little set screws with a little Allen key on the bottom, and that's how you micro adjust your 90. But then if you want to undercut something, like I was saying on the Festool with the -1 degree, you push these tabs in and the saw can back bevel that way. The Makitas come with a 5 amp hour battery. The Festools come with a 5.2 amp hour battery. One thing that I have not used, so I can't speak to, is Festool has Bluetooth technology with their batteries, so apparently you can check them maybe on the charger or when you're using them and see the actual power. But I am not aware of actually how that works. All right, so let's talk about blade change. Now, again, this is something that Festool does about 10–15% better, but they take about the same amount of time and are relatively the same process. So let me show it to you with the Festool. You lift this green up, and with Festool products, anything that's green is a button and it does something. You remove the Allen key, and you need to make sure the depth stop is down, and then it just locks into place, and the blade is locked, and you can loosen this Allen key here, change your blade out, put your key back, and then when you put this handle down, it unlocks. So the Makita, the Allen key is down here underneath the handle. You then, of course, you also need to make sure that your depth stop is down, and this is where it differs a little bit. You need to press in the handle like you were gonna make a cut, and then it locks right here into this little blue guy here. Then the blade is still not locked. You need to press down this lever here, and then the blade is locked. You stick your Allen key in, change your blade, but then like the Festool, it's real easy to release. You just press in the handle and lift it up, and it's ready to go. All right, 2 more things I want to cover before we make some cuts. And if I missed anything, please throw it down in the comments. Of course, it's impossible to know everything about a tool, but I think we did a pretty comprehensive guide here. Now, it's very clear that Makita copied Festool when they developed this, because the hoses are the exact same size, just like the track. So the vacuum setup, you could hook up a Festool. I use a Bosch vacuum, and the stock fitting that comes with the Bosch fits perfectly in both of these, and it works great. One thing I forgot to mention is the Festool does also come with a vacuum bag, and the way you use that is you take off the hose attachment, and then you twist the bag on, and it folds out like that. Now, one of the best things that sets the Festool apart from the Makita is the riving knife. So, unlike any other track saw I've used, the Festool has a riving knife, which is a kickback deterrent. Sometimes you've all had the experience where you're making a long rip cut and the board pinches the blade. So the Festool has a riving knife, which is pretty primo. The Festool also comes with there's a green insert here that presses down on a sheet of ply. So if you're doing really fine cuts, you can change this out, and there's another little zero clearance thing that pushes down on the sheet of ply ahead of the blade. So this just comes out like this, and this goes in here. Now, full disclosure, I've never actually used this, so I'd have to maybe read the manual, because it does look like it hits the blade. So maybe you cut into it a little bit and then you get that perfect zero clearance, or it's just for scoring. I'd have to do a little bit more research to give you my full opinion on that. So let's start making some cuts. All right, now when you want to talk about cut quality, this was the Festool and this was the Makita. Festool has a significant amount more fuzz and tear out than the Makita did. That could, you know, be a variety of factors. However, the blades have identical usage on them, and they're the blades that came with the saws. So the Festool definitely has a little bit more tear out, but the Festool definitely has about, again, 10 to 15% more power. So let's talk about which one I would recommend. Which one would I recommend? I think it breaks down to a few key points that you would need to consider for yourself. For me, it's the Makita, and there's a few reasons. One, you know, the price difference for a tool you're gonna have forever, it's up to you how you view your tools. I'm a buy once, cry once guy, so I always like to get the best one that I can afford. But that being said, I think the Makita is a phenomenal saw. The Festool has some bells and whistles and accuracy to it that is synonymous with the Festool name, and they're great. Is it worth an extra, you know, close, you know, 40% to get the Festool? That's something you'll have to decide. The tracks are more expensive, the clamps are more expensive. Phenomenal piece of equipment. But for me, the biggest difference is that, you know, I don't plan on buying any more Festool cordless stuff. I have invested years and years in the Makita name, so I have tons of batteries. The amount of cordless tools available in the Makita line is endless. I mean, there's so many, you know, I love my pin nailer, my brad nailer, my trim router, all of these things that I use constantly. You know, I have about 15 cordless Makita tools, and you know, the Festool line is very small. The batteries are incredibly cost prohibitive, and so I can't just like go get extra batteries and things like that. But if you're using this for fine finish work, this is a phenomenal choice. Everything about it is well done and accurate and designed for, you know, a finished carpenter that really goes the extra mile. So, you know, it's up to you to decide what's most important. Do you want, you know, the absolute Ferrari of track saws, and the trade-off being that, you know, it's more expensive and you may, you know, run out of battery and not have extras? Or do you want one that I personally have used for a long time and always kicks butt for me? It does great, accurate work. I love it. It was less expensive, and it's really worked out great for me. Also, one thing I should say is they do have this is the 55, they do have a 77, 75 or something like that, which is a bigger one. So, you know, there is one that is in a different class. You know, for me, it's the Makita, but for you, it may be the Festool, and I've got nothing bad to say about this saw. It does phenomenal work. The little dust collection bag yeah, that was the first time I'd actually ever used it, but it got all the dust. So, you know, if you're using it in a client's house, it could work great for you and be portable, which was one of the things I talked about earlier as being a downside to both of them. So that's what I have to say about today's Toolsday. Thank you for watching. If you want to support the channel, please head over to the Katz-Moses store, pick up an apron, a dovetail jig, or a stop block, and we're adding products monthly right now. So we're going to be adding a bunch of products I love and use throughout the year. So check back if you've been there and got everything in our store. Thank you for your support, guys. I really appreciate it. Stay safe in the shop. Have a wonderful day.